Yeah, so
I'd really love if I had like a any Scandinavian friends that I could pick their brain about this kind of stuff.
you're Scandinavian. How does this make you feel about your culture?
So hey, can I come to that sacrifice next summer?
Yeah, do
It
you
sounds
guys have a
cool.
midsummer party? Yeah. Hey, El Toddo.
What's going on?
We got a podcast, The Buff and the Blazer. If I was a listener, where would I go to find more?
You can check us out on our website, thebuffandtheblazer.com. Drew over there writes a article that goes along with every single episode.
You can find all kinds of little extras on the articles, and you can listen to the podcast right there. Also, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, we're on Twitter at Buff and Blazer. Follow us there.
Get those clicks, people.
The Buff and the Blazer.
Welcome to the Buff and the Blazer, episode 29. As always, I'm Drew, and I'm joined with my good friend, Mr. El Toddo.
What's going on, dude?
What's going on, man? How you been?
Good. Worked out of
Yeah.
town all week in insanely hot weather.
Oh, so I saw.
120 degree weather. It was lovely. Lost
I do
7
not envy
pounds in
that.
4 days.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Probably just as fantastic as our listener request this week. We have a request come in for a little film that came out a couple years ago. We're talking Midsommar, directed by Ari Aster, directed and written by Ari Aster. And this is a film I saw in theaters when it came out, and you hadn't seen it.
No,
So
yeah,
I
I've heard
was-
you talk about it in the past.
Yeah, so I was like really glad that someone requested this film because it's something I've been wanting you to see for a while. And like right off the bat, what did you think? You saw it.
Well, shout out Renee thanks for the suggestion. This movie's crazy as fuck.
Thank you, Renee.
And I had an idea of where it was going to go. I knew it was going to be pretty crazy because I looked into it a little bit. But it was definitely a little more intense than I thought it was going to be. And it was intense in a strange way because it wasn't like super violent. It had this like really whimsical fairy tale kind of vibe to the whole movie with some horrendous shit going down.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like these students go there and it turns into like this crazy murder fest zombie movie or something. That's kind of what I expected, you know?
Right.
Like a Purge style.
Yeah.
You know, and it didn't go that route. It stayed in this really strange kind of like fairy tale mode the whole movie, even with all the crazy. And I was pretty blown away. I will say I laughed hysterically, like literally hysterically out loud laughing, couldn't stop laughing for about the last hour of the movie. And I know it's not a comedy in any way at all, but I tend to laugh a lot in horror movies. And I think in Pet Sematary I laughed a whole lot too. And I was bursting out laughing for like the whole last hour of the movie. But it was really good, man.
Well, okay, so clarify for our listeners though, like laughing because of bad, awful movie making, or
No.
laughing because of fantastical things going on.
Yeah,
on
yeah,
screen?
laughing at like how far the envelope keeps getting pushed.
Yeah.
On like it's like it just like starts compounding with crazy towards the end of the movie.
Oh,
and
yeah.
on this, okay, it's been out a while. We can speak freely, right? We can spoiler it.
Yeah, this came out last year. So, and
If you haven't seen it, we're gonna spoil the shit out of it.
Yeah, so just a word of warning. We are gonna get into spoilers here because I think it'll benefit the discussion a little bit.
You can't talk around some of this shit, man. It's too crazy.
No, and I like the way you put it, like a whimsical fairy tale,
Yeah.
because I can't remember the last film I saw that weaved horror in the way that Ari Aster weaves horror in this film. Like, he turns the genre, the horror genre, on its head. And he gives you like this romantic looking, beautiful film with all this awful action happening on screen. And I think that was kind of the allure of the film when it first came out, because if you look at the posters, they were all like really colorful, all these beautiful, vibrant pastel colors. And like you'll have a little hint of, this isn't as pretty as we think it's going to be. You have like Florence Pugh, the main character in the film. She's like in a panic on the cover of the poster. And he comes off of his first feature film, Hereditary, which was like, to me, in my opinion, it's a modern classic horror film. That film is so good.
We're going to do that one at some point, too. That one was also requested by Renee.
Yeah, we have to do that at some point. But I think that film proved that Ari Aster understood the genre, at least in terms of like feature films, because I think he did several short films before that. And that film like blew my socks off. Like, I thought I was getting something the first half, and then once the second half got going, I was like, oh my God, what the fuck's going on? And you get a little bit of that in Midsommar. So when Midsommar came out, everyone was hyping it up because of his success with Hereditary. And I saw it in theaters, and I think I was more disturbed with Midsommar than I was with Hereditary.
It's a disturbing movie.
It's very disturbing. And I think that what makes it, one of the elements that makes it the most disturbing is that the story is very much self-contained. Like, every disturbing element happens because it's customary in this particular village group of people. And like, and we'll talk a little bit about this, but you and I both have a background in anthropology.
Yes, so we're qualified.
And this film really pushes like anthropological ethics in a direction where you're like, what would I do if I were placed in a circumstance like this? It really had me thinking, at least. Like,
I would have left quite early, to be
Yes.
honest. I'd say, fuck my thesis. I'll find something else. I'll go write about a collection or something. You kidding me? I would have left pretty early on.
It's like, what was that thesis project you recommended on that one ceramic shirt? I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all this stuff you learn in school about like cultural relativism and stuff, which we can explain a little bit, I guess, later on. But
It's mostly bullshit, by the way.
yeah, it totally has you questioning stuff like this, because most of those, societies where you deal with some of these extreme circumstances were all prehistoric and long gone. So those were just some of the things I was thinking of as I rewatched the film. But I do have to say, it's beautiful. Like, it's a horror film that is very disturbing, but it's so gorgeous, like, in terms of the filmmaking. Like, the visuals are beautiful. The score, I mentioned this a little bit in the article I'm writing, but the score is totally 180 degrees opposite of what's going on in the action. Like, it gives you this sweeping romantic score as people are really getting screwed.
It's like really disconnected emotionally
Yeah,
from the movie.
Right. And
But visually it matches. So it's like kind
Yeah.
of strange in that way.
And so it's like, it's those contradictions, I think, that make it even more disturbing than if you were to get like your typical sinister sounding like score or like dark color palette. So I don't know. To me, Ari Aster did something that was completely innovative in the genre with this film.
Yeah, I like how you say flip the horror genre kind of on its head, because you're completely right. It's like a totally different way to tell a really scary and disturbing story without any jump scares or any suspense music, and not even really too gory of anything. Like no, I take that back. There's some pretty good gore in it.
There's
But
a
not
few
like
spots.
not like in a really violent gore type of way. Does that
More
make
so
sense?
like more so in like a very realistic way.
Yeah.
Which I think is what makes it so disturbing.
Yeah, homeboy
Not
who
that I've seen any of that in real life, but
I wouldn't
I'm
want to
sure-
see any of that.
me either. But I'm sure if I had to, it would look just like that.
Like homeboy that jumps off the cliff, the old guy that
Yeah.
that doesn't die, and they like smash his head a few times,
Yeah, with the Harley Quinn mallet.
or the Thor's hammer or whatever. I think that's more appropriate
Yeah.
for this culture, right?
That's not even like over exaggerating. They totally Hulk smash his face in. Like it's awful.
But it's all in the context of like a cultural tradition, so it's not meant to be like this guy was bad and they're smashing his face. It's
No.
totally something else the way it's presented.
Yeah, and oh my gosh.
It's presented in a way where an anthropologist observing would have to just fucking swallow their shit and watch it, you know?
Yeah, not me.
No way, that's what I'm saying. That's when I would have left right then. I would have been like, no thanks.
No, I totally agree. I think so. You were kind of texting me as you were watching the film, and I remember that was the first thing you texted me about.
Yeah.
Well, there is the earlier, I guess, incident that happens in the film regarding her family, her parents. That's pretty like disturbing in its own right, and it's brutal.
Yeah, I would say the girl didn't need to use that much duct tape on her face with the hose. You could have just put the hose in the room and gone to sleep. Didn't have to make it that gruesome.
Yeah, but that wouldn't have been fun for the camera.
That's a heavy
yeah.
scene, man. That's a really heavy scene.
Yeah, that was so we get a little bit of that, and that's I guess the first like 15 minutes of the film. You get kind of the classic horror, is everything's very dark and it just looks scary too.
Yeah, yeah. I actually
And so-
forgot about a bunch of that part until you just said it.
Yeah. Like right off the bat the film shows you how different it is because you get the title, I guess the title of the film with the backdrop, the tapestry backdrop with the beautiful music.
Yeah.
And then it opens up to like a really gray, dark color palette. And then you kind of get past that and then finally into the village. And then it's like the film totally shifts from a classic horror film to something completely different. That seems almost like it's one giant trip fest.
Yeah,
Like
the
second
movie's very
time I watched
trippy.
it, the second time I watched it, well, not the second, like the third time I watched it. They're in the field before they get into the village, taking the shrooms, right?
Yeah.
And the way things are shot when they get into the village, I almost take the entire sequence of events after that as like one giant extension of that trip almost.
Yeah, well they keep them hopped up
Yeah.
for most of the movie with all their little teas and shit.
Yes.
But what I appreciated was a lot of times when a filmmaker is trying to portray a psychedelic moment, they go a little overboard with the hallucinations. They did
Right.
they did a really good job when they all take mushrooms in the beginning of really focusing on texture, and that's a lot
Okay.
of what, like mushroom hallucinations is a lot more texture based, not like three-dimensional figures walking into the room.
Yeah, so
Kinda
like
shit.
grass on the feet.
Yeah,
and
the
stuff?
grass and like the tree bark and the leaves and how all that's moving.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed how they kind of showed her panic situation where she you can tell she starts thinking about what's happened to her family and she kind of freaks out and mobs it over to this other group and they're all laughing at me. Like that was really accurate as to how mushroom trips can get.
Oh shit.
But just a word of caution, so she drinks mushroom tea and they all eat them, and the two trips are totally different. Mushroom tea hits you like a freight train and doesn't last nearly as long, while eating them comes on really slowly and then brings you down really slowly. So they're totally different trips. So it kind of made sense that like all of her friends, everyone that she's there with was really like having a good trip and hanging out, laying on the beautiful kind of rolling hills that they're in.
Yeah.
And she's getting like this kind of freight train of mushroom attack, and that's what like tea does to you. I was really impressed with how realistically they portrayed that first mushroom trip.
Oh wow.
It was cool. give a little insight.
Sweet. So yeah, maybe he did a little bit of research before the film.
He better.
Yeah.
You're going to be writing about mushrooms. You need to eat them.
All right, so I think it would help with our discussion to set up just the real basic general premise of the film.
Okay.
So, like, she loses her parents, her entire family, basically, her immediate family, her sister and her parents. Her sister's going through some, like, really dark suicidal stuff, and she ends up taking her own life and her parents' life. And that leaves Florence Pugh's character, Danny, off on her own. And she's there with her boyfriend, and I think her boyfriend and his, like, immediate circle of friends, Christian, that's his name, Jack Rayner, playing Christian, his name in the film, and they're all anthropologists, and I guess they're all talking about doing thesis research in Sweden, because they have a Swedish friend that's in the program with them who wants to take them to his village, where they're doing, like, a midsummer... like summer solstice festival.
Old pagan action, all you European folks, our prehistoric roots.
Right.
All the old, early Scandinavian and Celtic roots. That's what they're getting at.
Yeah, did you notice any of, like, the symbology or anything like that with some of the little monuments they had? Did any of that?
Well, it's geared much more towards, Scandinavian prehistory, I guess it is.
Like, I'm sure there has to be some kind of cultural significance to some of that stuff.
Yeah, it seemed, I don't know a ton about
Yeah.
that type of history, but the runes and, like, all of the style of housing
Yeah.
and all the little shrines and stuff seemed like it was researched. I don't know one way or another to call bullshit like, oh, that's inaccurate or that's inaccurate.
Yeah.
Because, again, these are, like, pre-writing times, so...
Just curious
So
to know if
who
you like,
knows?
recognized any of that stuff.
I recognized a certain type of gruesome event that they've done because I've seen it in other Scandinavian historical television shows.
That's
good
bizarre.
old Blood Eagle.
Yeah, I had no idea about that when you laid that down. And that
Watch
kinda
Vikings.
blew my mind.
Watch Vikings.
Ugh.
It's in there. It's pretty
I
cool.
watched, like, half of the first season. But, yeah, I got to get back into it.
It's
a
good.
good show.
Well, then you didn't even get to see the first Blood Eagle. There's two.
No, I didn't get to see
The
that.
first one's much more brutal than the second one. But from a historical perspective, I would guess that it's really well researched and fairly accurate. As far as, like, the actions that they're taking in the name of the religious stuff, I don't know how accurate any of that is.
No, I'm sure there's a lot of liberty with a lot of that stuff being taken. So, yeah, basically, those anthropology students, along with Danny, who is invited because Christian kind of feels guilty about leaving her behind.
Yeah, they have a shitty relationship.
From the beginning.
They're stuck in a shitty relationship.
Yep.
And her kind of emotional trauma from her family situation is kind of like the driving emotional force of the whole movie.
Right. And so they get into the village, and things just slowly start to go downhill from there.
Yeah, I'm glad you said slowly because it's like a gradual dip into the third millennium BC or something crazy.
Oh, man.
Maybe not that old, but
Yeah. So I think, for me, in the entire film, the two most disturbing scenes for me are the cliff scene that involves, like, the two eldest people in the whole village, and then the very end of the film. Those had me feeling something in my stomach that just wasn't sitting well. And like I said, I don't think it's because of what's going on in general, but I guess just the way that it looked, it just seemed a little too realistic for me.
yeah, the falls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, those were brutal. You're laughing.
That's what I mean, dude. It was brutal, and that's how I, like, react to seeing really realistic death. Like, when the chick jumps off, she, like, bullseye.
Yeah.
Lands face first, smashes her head on the old altar rock or whatever that is, and then the old man jumps like he's jumping into a lake, and he, like, snapped all the bones in his leg and his back and everything. It looks
He has like
so real.
bloodshot eyes and
The level of pain and injury that he's, exhibiting when he's still alive from the fall, I imagine is what somebody would look like after jumping
man.
off. It's not a huge cliff either, and that's what I think plays into the realism. It's only like maybe 60 feet, 70 feet.
something like that. Yeah.
It's not huge. It's not like they would splat down and body parts would fly everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, it
I don't
looked
know.
extremely real, man.
Yeah, I guess it just seemed like there were two pumpkins that got kicked in.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe it. So yeah, that first horrific scene. Once you watch it, you're like completely disturbed, but then at the same time, that's one hell of a way to catch your attention for the rest of the film. And like, that's the thing with Ari Aster, at least from the two films that I've seen of his, this film and Hereditary, he's not afraid to like, I feel like every time he brings a film out, he pushes your level of, oh man, like tolerance.
Yeah, what you're willing to watch.
Yeah, like he just pushes the envelope every time to get you to the edge of being completely uncomfortable where you like almost want to walk out.
Yeah, I asked you if anybody walked out because I imagine this movie probably made a lot of people walk out of the theater.
Yeah, no.
Just from like a squeamish standpoint.
Yeah, and like my showing when I saw it was probably not the best to gauge because I went to like the very last showing, like 11 o'clock at night.
Okay.
So I'm sure they were all just a bunch of weirdos like me going to see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's he really understands like what terror is and I guess what horror is in the way that he shoots. I guess what's the word to even say?
I don't know. It's such a unique take on horror.
Like you're a fan of horror, right? You love the horror genre.
Yeah. Probably second favorite.
And a lot of it, I mean, some films look more realistic than others, but like, is there a film that comes off the top of your head that you can recall that is on this level of realism? I guess, quote unquote realism, having not seen a lot of this stuff in person.
Maybe
kind of
A Good
imagining
Woman is hard to find. The movie we did just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that's for the first thing that pops into my head.
Yeah.
But this one's quite a bit more gruesome. That one's gruesome too, but it's only one really gruesome thing. This is a whole bunch.
Yeah. And like I said, it's not so much that, like, I've seen worse scenarios in horror films that have happened that are supposed to be scarier than this, but I think he avoids that, and instead he just tries to give you something that's ultra realistic.
Yeah.
It's like, you wouldn't think in a horror film that watching two people cliff dive to their deaths is going to be something that turns your stomach, but he does it in a way where it's horrific and it fits completely in the genre.
And it's such like a beautiful shot, right? It's
Yes.
like really bright and these big white cliffs.
Yeah.
And it's not like a dark thing.
No, like
It's really,
everything's bright.
Everything's bright and light, but you would think with this level of graphic body smashing that it would be like a more dark filmed type thing, so maybe you don't see as much.
Right. But no, it like the way he shoots, it looks like he went into like a barren desert and was just there with his camera shooting this event. Like, that's how realistic it comes across.
Yeah.
And it's kind of disturbing. It's very disturbing. So in terms of, I mentioned already like two of my most unnerving scenes in the whole film. Like, was there a scene that affected you most in this whole film?
Yeah, the fucking, what was it, like the sacred impregnation or whatever, the sacred coitus that takes place.
Yes.
That shit was
The sacred pubic hair pies.
oh dude, like I'm talking at the end when he like bangs the chick,
Yeah, after he gets her permission.
or he kind of gets like, they kind of tell him he has to do it,
Yeah.
but I don't know how anybody could get hard in a situation like that.
Yeah, that was pretty
And be
horrific.
able to perform.
Yeah.
That
No.
scene kind of was. I was laughing just hysterically, man. Hysterically laughing that whole
they
time.
give him some kind of concoction. They give him like a natural Viagra.
Oh.
That's right. Because
And
I don't
he-
think anyone would be able to do that.
Yeah, that scene's a little disturbing, man. It's funny. It's not meant to be funny, but I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah. No, it's just so like outlandish and bizarre. I think
Bizarre,
that's
yeah, that's a good word.
all right. So the film progresses, and then one by one, the main characters start to disappear. We don't know why or how, and that slowly gets revealed one step at a time, and it ultimately builds towards this grand climax of climax, literally.
Of sacrifice.
Yeah, sacrifice, and she actually gets crowned like the May Queen.
Yeah.
So she is like
She wins the
worshipped-
dance off,
Right.
the some type of concoction hallucination tea drink dance off.
Yeah. That's a great way of putting it. 'Cause that's exactly what it is. And so she's doing that while Christian's off doing the dirty with his the lady that chose him. And slowly it reveals what happens to all the rest of the group. And then the final major sacrifice, what the whole ceremony festival has built up to, was to how many people? What was it? They sacrificed like 6 people, 6 or 7,
6 or 9.
something like that.
I don't know. I
And-
think it's 9, to be honest.
Yeah, and basically we find out that they were all kind of just chosen to be these sacrificial victims for the end of this whole festival.
I think 9 would be the right number because it would go with the cycles of the moon and then also gestation period in humans, which is
Right.
all big parts of like pagan religious beliefs. It all kind of stems down from.
Yeah, and they do emphasize the whole renewal cycle too.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes
And it's
total
90
sense.
years,
Yeah.
which I'm not sure if 90 years is a processional change or not. I think it's longer than that. But who knows? Might be like 270 years as a procession.
I was a
Who
little
knows?
bit confused with the 90-year cycle thing because the pictures of the May Queens they show were recent, like from the previous year, right?
I
So-
didn't catch that, to be honest.
Yeah. So like I was wondering, I probably missed something, but yeah, they do say like every 90 years. But like
Or maybe
had
they
a
don't.
picture of the
Maybe they do a May Queen every year, but they only do this hardcore shit every 90 years.
oh, so they were just lucky.
Normally,
They
they're
got
just
it.
eating a awesome feast, but every 90 years, some 9 people are going to get the chop, and some of the people need to be brought there from other cultures because that's like
Yeah.
a part of it too, which is interesting.
Yeah, so
I really love if I had like any Scandinavian friends that I could pick their brain about this kind of stuff.
so you're Scandinavian. How does this make you feel about your culture?
So hey, can I come to that sacrifice next summer?
yeah, do
it
you
sounds
guys have
cool.
a midsummer party? Yeah.
Maybe it offended a lot of Scandinavians. Who knows?
Yeah. Hopefully not, but I don't think Ari Aster gives a shit after that. I mean, he wrote it. So,
Were you happy on an emotional level with how it ended? Because it's like a happy ending, emotionally. It's a triumph for Danny. Were you satisfied with the ending? Because I was like stoked.
okay, so I was satisfied in the sense that it ended. It ended in such a dark place, but I wasn't satisfied in the sense that I was like, "Hell yeah, Danny!" Like,
Oh, I was
you're the queen of the world.
I was so stoked because she had to choose Christian.
Well, here's the thing
to
too.
be
Like,
sewn up in the fucking bear, dude.
so the last shot of her that we get, isn't she kind of like smirking?
Yeah, That's what
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
saying. Because she
Yeah,
had
yeah.
to choose, remember?
Okay, so I'll say that I was satisfied. Yeah,
I was stoked.
that was pretty satisfying.
Because fuck Christian.
She gets beat down pretty hard, like emotionally.
And you know she's going to
He's a total
marry
douche.
Pele.
Yeah, Pele.
They're going to get married.
He's
What's his
like, he's the baller of the village.
Wilhelm
Wilhelm Blomgren.
Blomgren. That's a cool name.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. No, so I guess, yeah, in a sense, it is very satisfying.
Because that's like the emotional arc, right? Like,
yeah,
she's going through horrible shit. And her conversations with Pele, you know, like when he's talking to her, have you ever felt held, you know? Like, do you have a family to, like, embrace you? And that's like she finds that, even though it's all of the people she traveled there with besides homeboy that brought him there. Get sacrificed to the pagan gods, you know? Or to the sun, essentially. That's what it all goes back to.
That's actually a great point that you bring up now that I think about it.
Because, right, that's the whole emotional arc. And I was, like, so stoked. I was like, she better pick him.
Yeah.
They don't show it, you know, but then in the next scene, he's, you know, getting sewn up.
Yeah.
And
cool.
I like that.
All right, so this is a great time to just get it and right into the characters.
Okay.
So regarding Danny, like, you're right, because she does kind of start from this position of complete powerlessness and no agency at all.
Yeah.
It's like her family gets taken away from her. She's helpless. She's like lying around in bed all day. She doesn't know what to do with herself. And I guess slowly as the film goes on, she gains a little bit of power each time. And once she becomes the May Queen, and like you said, she actually chooses Christian.
Yeah, she has to.
To be bared.
To be bared, yeah.
Yeah. He's born.
I feel bad for the
belly
bear,
of his-
man. I didn't feel bad
So do I.
for any of the people that got the off. Maybe the guy
hilarious.
maybe the guy who got blood eagled, he didn't need that. He seemed all
That's
right.
how shitty everyone in the film was, where you're like, aw, poor bear.
Yeah, but the Toy Story kid, Will Poulter,
The Toy Story kid, okay.
Mark in the movie, he definitely needed to be sacrificed. Pissing on the ancient tree, you know, like you can't do that.
All right, so just for the record, I'm going through his filmography, and I don't see any mention of Toy Story.
He's
but
the
he
Toy
does,
Story dude. I've seen
he
the
looks-
pictures.
Yeah, he does look very, very similar to Sid in Toy Story. And he may as well be Sid in this film. But yeah,
and Christian, he deserved it. Josh, William Jackson Harper's character, he deserved it for breaking the rules. You can't be stealing the ancient rune book, bro. You don't even know how to read it.
Yeah, not the best example of ethical anthropology going on.
He gets sacrificed to the vegetable gods, bro.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Like
Simon,
I said, I can't help but laugh. Okay,
it's fair. It's fair.
I just laughed the whole movie.
Simon is the one that gets the eagle treatment, right?
Yeah,
What did you
yeah.
call it?
The blood eagle.
The blood eagle.
So you cut the ribs off of the spine. You cut the back open, and you dislodge all the ribs from the spine, and then you pull the lungs out and hang them up, and they'll stay alive, breathing for a long time, and the lungs will inflate. So it's like you spread them open like an eagle.
Oh my god.
Ragnar does it to
Fantastic.
Jarl Borg, and I think the end of season 2 on Vikings.
Holy shit.
And on that, when they do it on that, it shows him like hacking the ribs from the spine with an axe.
Wow.
It's epic, dude.
Do you see it? Like, do you see
Well, it's on
the
TV.
end result?
Yeah, you do. And then they also do it to King Aela, Ragnar's sons over in old Northumbria, I think it is.
Wow.
On season 4, maybe.
Fantastic.
Totally recommend that show. It's awesome. There's 10 episodes left, and then it's over.
Yeah, all right.
But yeah, I don't know if he deserved to get blood eagled because he just kind of lost his shit when he saw the two old folks jump off.
And he
the
wasn't
cliff.
an anthropologist, him or Connie, right?
Yeah, did Connie get the axe? I can't remember. Is she in the temple at the end? I don't remember what happens to her character. There's a lot going on, and it's a long movie too.
I think she does.
I think they all get it except Danny, because
Yeah,
she's
I
the
think
new
so.
queen, man.
Right, I think so. They were all specifically chosen, like, to be sacrifices. They were like 2 backpackers, right? Like,
Something like
they
that.
had a friend. They had a friend that was there at the village too.
Yeah, Pele's
Yeah,
pagan brother.
yeah. But it's hilarious. Like, my 2 favorite characters in the whole film are Pele and Danny.
Yeah, same here.
And
Totally.
Pele's like, he's a total chill, like, very nice dude that's following his customs. And he has, like, by the end of the film, he's like the MVP of the village because he, like, brought however many sacrifices that he did.
Wonderful, worthy sacrifices.
Yeah,
man.
and the May Queen. So, yeah, the king and queen of Midsommarville. And they're like, I think they're the 2 most likable characters in the whole film.
Yeah, and
Surprisingly.
And I don't think Pele's character is meant to be very likable. But it kind of plays with how you see what's good and bad, right?
Right.
Which is very interesting because a lot of these characters, like Christian, is a shitty boyfriend, forgetting birthdays and staying with a chick just because he feels bad for her. And then, like, Mark's character is just like a punk-ass kid smoking his vape and pissing on the ancestor tree and classic
Yeah.
American,
Right.
And he deserves to get whatever they do to him. I wasn't quite sure what they did to him. They definitely, like, cut his face off, but I don't know if that was his face
Mm-hmm.
behind his face or if that was someone else wearing his face when his resolution gets revealed. I don't know.
Well, here's where I think that this film is kind of fascinating and going back to my comment about it turning the genre on its head. So there's no villain in this film.
No.
This
No.
film doesn't have a villain. I think this film is very anthropological in the sense that it calls you to question what is evil
Yeah.
and what do you perceive as evil? What does that even mean? And where do you draw the line?
Right. Whether you find offense of this movie is going to be based on your own individual cultural perception. Because I was like, sweet. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And
like,
is that worse than what, some traditions in modern religions do?
yeah, and
Is
that's-
it? That's the question, right? That's like the
Right.
whole, is it relative,
yeah.
Because I
And
think
that's where
there's
I
some
think-
couple million kids who grew up under the Catholic yoke that might say this isn't as bad as what they went through.
Yeah, well, I think all throughout history you can point at all kinds of different examples like that. But that's the interesting question, or the questions that were coming into my mind as I sat down and watched this for the second time. And, like, I tried to put my anthropology hat on because, I don't know, I think it's a more interesting experience when you can do that and ask the question of, all right, I studied for over 5-6 years, and I've developed this background of cultural relativism and looking at things with respect to how they interpret events from wherever they've grown up or from the different traditions that they've been a part of, and how does that interpret my understanding of what's going on. And so I'm sitting down going, like, if I was put in this situation, what would I do? And I think, like you, as soon as those 2 jump off the cliff, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go find another project.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
so
I can study cultural relativism for 4 or 5 years, and it just still doesn't work for me in that moment.
it don't work for me in really any way at all. There's just certain things that, and there's a million examples. We'll use this movie as one.
Yeah. Well,
Sacrifice.
and here's the other thing, too, before I forget.
Okay.
But I think the other question to ask is, where do you draw the line between right and wrong? Is there such thing as a right and wrong? And I think those are important questions to ask.
I think there is.
I do too.
Okay, cool. So
I'm so glad.
we're on the same page on that.
Yes.
Because there were many times going through my education where I was just like, yeah, I don't think that's true. And you can, I don't know, let's throw out some examples of relativism.
Right.
So let's say, try not to pick on anything specific.
Yeah.
Let's
like a
say
generic
a ritual rape. Okay,
Yeah.
that's hard to say. Ritual rape is very common in one part of the world, in a big circle of tribal peoples, and it's when I was first presented it in college, it was like that's part of their culture. It's not on you to say whether that's right or wrong. I think that's wrong. There's another example. Example, because it's not, for me, it's like it's imposing cultural terror on one individual at the behest of the rest of the culture, or at the at the expense or the freedom of the rest of the culture to do this tradition, but that's awful for one person.
Yeah.
Another example, there's like a culture in another part of the world where it's fairly common that the have a young boy's rite of passage ceremony where he has to go into like a large house in the village and blow all the dudes in the village to completion before he's a man.
Example too.
I don't think that's okay.
Right.
There's public circumcisions in parts of the world, female circumcisions on the public square. I don't think that's okay.
Yeah.
There's the storied tradition of raping boys in the Christian world. I don't think that's okay. I mean, that's kind of like an extreme example because one would argue that it's not specifically part of the culture. I don't see how you could argue that it's not with the data out there. But this movie it kind of doesn't go as far as those extreme examples where you have a clear picture of saying, yes, that's right or wrong. This is one of those movies that does kind of get into that weird inside of the Venn diagram, the middle area, where it's like, I don't know, it could be okay to them because, you know what I mean? Maybe the cliff jumping part, but maybe not the full-blown sacrifice at the end.
Yeah.
And then there's another example on the opposite end of where something, the ideas of relativism hold weight is in, specific hunter-gatherer societies where a new baby is born and that pushes them over their number of people that they can support based on their mobility patterns and the resources in their area. So they practice infanticide.
Right.
Which doesn't sound good on its face at all, but when you explain the environmental context of the whole group, it's like, maybe it is the morally right thing to do because then the whole group's going to suffer. So it's a very wishy-washy, hard topic to attack, and I don't think it's black and white in any way at all. And this movie's kind of like I said, right in the middle of that. You could see it as being right or wrong kind of thing.
Yeah, and like I would say most people aren't sitting into this film asking themselves those questions to the extent that maybe someone like you or I would. But like this film is something perfect to show in your like culture anthropology course and just start discussion. But
might have some angry parents if you have some younger students in the class.
Maybe on their first college.
No, I'm saying like kids that are in their first year of college or something.
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe upper division.
Doing their coursework. Save this for the 300 level.
Yeah. We'll do that. Oh man. Yeah, like all I can say is sitting down watching this film, it really questioned my understanding of cultural relativism. And when you're taught what cultural relativism is, it's easy to understand and kind of think that you understand what it is and that you can apply it to all kinds of different circumstances. But when I saw this film and put myself in those shoes, like I said, I think there is a place where you do draw a line and you're just like, I guess that's just being from a certain background
Yeah, it's interesting.
I can't help but say no.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like I said, it's like this giant bubble where people can go way too far in saying relativism is true and horrific acts are okay in the name of relativism. And then you can be on the other side of it, like the hunter-gatherer example, where it's like, well, that when you explain it logically, it doesn't seem as horrific.
Yeah,
but
I guess
you better be.
I guess
what
the
I'm
easy way.
Yeah, what I'm getting at is, if you do want to dabble in this intellectual realm, you better be willing to do the hard mental work, because every single example is going to fall somewhere on that spectrum.
Yeah,
and there is no black and white to it. You know what I mean? It's a rainbow of gradient.
Exactly.
It's a gradient of whether or not you buy it or not. It's not all ideas in cultural relativism are completely bogus, and it's not all of them are completely fucking legitimate. It's a giant spectrum in between, and I would, if you are going to dabble in this, I would stay closer to the hunter-gatherer example side and not go too far, because then it just gets ridiculous. You think about the amount of anthropologists that had to have witness some of these horrific acts go down and document it, and have to hold their tongue, and in the name of relativism, like that's awful,
Yeah, and I'm sure you've come across some people who think they identify with those beliefs, that like everything's relative.
Put them in a situation like that. And then see,
exactly. And I think you put it perfectly. It's not all relative, and it's not all not relative.
Yeah.
There is that middle ground that you have to like apply to different circumstances. But yeah, it's a whole years and years worth of like delving into circumstances like that.
No, thank you.
Yeah, no thanks. All right, so putting all the theoretical talk aside and all of the deep dive academic discussion.
No more of that, please.
Yeah, we'll put that aside and spare you. I think overall, though, you can say that I think the performances in this film across the board, including all of the extras and all of the non-important speaking roles in the film, were wonderful.
Yeah, I didn't buy Christian that much.
Oh, okay. So he didn't work as much for you.
He worked at the very end when he was like all drugged up.
Yeah.
That's it. I didn't really buy him. But everyone else was really good. Danny, Florence Pugh, she's really good. The emotional acting in the beginning of the movie that she does before they get to Sweden, super impressive.
She's another fantastic English actress. You can add her to the list that grows.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, I think overall I was pretty happy with the acting in this film. It all worked for me. I bought Christian. I bought him as the douchey boyfriend character.
Yeah,
Jack Rayner.
Yeah, I don't know. There were a few scenes that I didn't like it that much. In particular, the scene when he has to go meet with the matriarch.
Oh, yeah.
And learn of his deed that he has to perform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's, I think, where I'm so excited to talk about is the overall look of this film, the cinematography of the film, Midsommar. Like I said, this is not what you expect to see from a horror film.
No.
It is gorgeous, and I'm talking about shots, cinematography, the way things are shot, but more so color palette and lighting. Everything's shot very, very warmly and vibrant, and you would think you're sitting down watching like a rom-com, the way everything's lit.
Yeah,
a rom-com taking place in like, a prairie field. It's gorgeous. What did you think, having seen it for the first time?
Visually, it's extremely pleasing. Even though there's like even all the horrific stuff is shot like beautifully, but what I really enjoyed the opening sequence when they get there, when they pull up in the car, because there's like a really that's like a really long uncut deal.
Yeah.
Like when they eat the mushrooms and take the tea and stuff.
Right.
It's like following them.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really good. And they did a really good job of making the whole little like set that they built look really real. There were some great overhead shots.
Oh, yeah.
Like this would be, they probably totally just built that whole place, right?
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
it
yeah,
is
for
just
sure.
like awesome looking in those houses, how they're all slanted.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that whole look, and there's so many like wide shots where, you know, there's 100 people maybe out there acting
Yeah.
all in these group things, and they're shooting from super far away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really liked it, man. I was blown away at how good it was visually.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that there's a style to everything in the film, including like the buildings and architecture.
Yeah, and there was this in the beginning when they're driving in the car up to there. There's
Yeah.
this like big upside down action. Do you remember
Yeah.
that?
I do.
While they're driving,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought that was super cool.
And I think that has something to tell you about the story too. It's not just a cool shot.
Yeah,
I think I mentioned that in an earlier podcast, but that it's like all symbolic in terms of flipping everything on its head. Like you think you're going to this paradise and you're really going into hell for these characters. Like for what happens to them. And that's always like the mark of a good director, laying down very intentional cinematography to tell his story. Trying to think the effects in terms of the way they did the gore and the brutality of everything. Man, I don't think it gets better than this.
yeah.
It's
And again, I'll say it again: the level of detail on the hallucinations.
yeah.
Because they like didn't overdo it at all.
Right.
Like, did you notice at the end when they're all on the tee, whatever that tee is,
Mm-hmm.
and like the middle of the table was moving like mushroomy, you know?
Yeah.
But not the whole scenes were. That's what I really
what about
liked.
what about the big eyes? Is that a thing too?
The big eyes.
Like, do you notice that in some of the scenes the characters have like
Oh,
big
really?
looking eyes?
Yeah. Oh, the dilated pupils. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what your eyes are gonna look like when you're tripping balls.
Well, no, I meant like there were some shots where it looked like some of the characters' eyes were like enlarged
Oh, I don't
to
know.
look out of place.
There was so many shots. Like I said, it's a long
Yeah.
movie. I remember Homeboy having the flowers on his eyes
Yeah.
that
I
got
remember
blood
that too.
eagled.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
the trees moving and like how the attention to detail on being accurate for like what a mushroom trip would feel like. I
Yeah.
really love that whole first kind of sequence in that open little valley
Yep.
before they walk through the little ceremonial thing.
Yeah.
It's a really trippy movie, and as far as visually, and it was just so pleasing, you know, even though there's a bunch of horrible shit that you see.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I think the action going on in the frame is what's horrific, and everything else that underlines it, which is like the cinematography, color palette, and including score, they're just completely off base with the action going on, that it's really offsetting and off-putting, and it adds to that feeling of just complete dread and discomfort. It's really bizarre. I don't know. Do you kind of feel the same way?
Yeah. If you like, you could edit the movie and take out a bunch of things and play it for
Yeah.
someone, and and like they wouldn't know it was a horror movie.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you would think it's some weird like modern Cinderella rendition or something.
Yeah. Well, at least they kill the beast at the end, the poor bear.
Yeah, I felt bad for the bear, man. Why did he have to go?
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I mentioned it real briefly, but the score, it's another one of those elements that is it doesn't really match what's going on screen. And I think the sequence for me that sticks out the most is the end the whole final sacrifice, when you have the burning going on and then the score is playing at the same time, it's this very like tranquil with a hint of like somber vibe going on to it. And it's just really disturbing. It's all so disturbing because it doesn't match. And then you get the final shot of Danny's face and she gives a little smirk. And then it's like this triumphant finale. And it's just completely off the wall in the genre.
Yeah. It's the music is met. It gives it like this fairy tale type of feel.
Yeah.
You know, like a happy story. And
Exactly.
it is kind of happy for one character.
Yes.
Or for a bunch of the characters, but the main character, it's like this really big shift from complete powerless and, you know, controlled by her emotional damage
Yeah.
to like full control of a commune, man. It's cool.
Bizarre.
And she gets her revenge on her shitty boyfriend.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned Cinderella, because the way the film kicks off, it literally starts off like Cinderella. It's like you get the little title card with the harpsy music, and it's lovely. And yeah, Cinderella meets Freddy Krueger or something. I don't know.
Vikings.
There you go. Vikings. So yeah, I really can't. I think we did a decent job of just showing you how unique this film is in terms of the horror genre. And I think for anyone that hasn't gotten into Ari Aster's work, he's becoming like a modern master of the genre. And anything he releases, I will watch. I can't wait to see what he's doing next.
Yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I don't know if I'd want to watch it again because it did make me quite kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Not in like I couldn't watch it way, but like it's pretty long, and it might be kind of laborious to do again.
It is.
I think
It is. I like I said, I think
probably
this is only
notice
the
a
second,
lot more though. To be honest,
Yeah. This is only the second or third time I've seen it, so
Yeah.
it pushes you towards the edge for sure. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about our love hates real quick.
All right.
Let's start with you.
I loved how original it is and how different it is and how it kind of like has that make you think factor.
Yeah.
And I didn't really hate anything about the movie, but it did make me a little uncomfortable at times. But that's good, right? That's like
For sure.
a good horror way. But just uncomfortable from a standpoint of like just any scenes of really intense like religious fervor of any kind. Doesn't matter what it is. It makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like
I get
the chanting shit and like all those types of scenes.
Yeah.
The little ceremonies where everybody's locked in. Like, I don't like that kind of shit, man.
Yeah, I think for
freaks
me,
me out, dude.
The group like wailing.
Yeah.
That was pretty weird.
Yeah,
too.
dude. That shit makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, me too. So I guess for me, I loved how this totally causes you to check everything you know about the horror genre at the door. Because this is not your typical horror film.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that Ari Aster is kind of innovating with this film within the genre and making it probably more disturbing than any horror film that I've seen, at least, very recently. But yeah, he's totally innovating, and like I said, I'll watch anything that he brings out from this point on. There wasn't a whole lot I didn't like. Like you, I think for me, this film doesn't have a whole lot of rewatch value just because it makes you feel so uncomfortable. Like you're labored through this film as you watch it, and it's very disturbing.
Maybe that's why I laugh, right?
Yeah, it was your way of coping with the queasy stomach.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, I guess there's nothing much else that you could do other than laugh hysterically.
Maybe
But
it
if
like
you-
keeps me from getting too sucked in to
Yeah.
where it really affects you in a bad way, you know?
Yeah, well, could you, man? I walked out of that theater and I was like, "Yeah, that's Ari Aster again. He got me." But I'd say if you are a fan of the horror genre, you have to give this film a watch if you haven't already seen it, which I doubt. But yeah, for anyone that's into horror or into films that just really push the envelope, this is one that you have to see. And it was a great recommendation
Yeah.
by Renee.
Hell yeah.
And I think it brought about some good discussion. And so yeah, if you guys have any other recommendations, you can always hit us up. We're on Twitter at Buff and Blazer. We have our email, thebuffandtheblazer@gmail.com. Our website, thebuffandtheblazer.com. And there's all kinds of ways you guys can reach out and let us know if you have any recommendations or movies that you want us to get on into another episode. But we're happy to do this, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So drum roll, dude. What do you give the movie?
I am going to give this film a 4.5 buckets of popcorn. 4.5 because 4.5 is what I can tolerate, and the last half of the 5 is is that I feel like I'm labored watching this film. Like I have to sit myself down and power through it, and it just makes me really uncomfortable. So yeah, I'll give it 4.5. It's not my cup of tea when it comes to films, but I really enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it. It's a good movie, but like we said, it makes you pretty uncomfortable. I'm gonna give it 4.
Okay.
4 bong loads. I watched this movie sober, by the way. No cheeb. Because I'm staying in another state where there's no cheeb, so
Oh, that's
I
a
ain't
bummer.
bringing any cheeb with me. Respect the laws of the other state, you know? But
Oh, yeah.
there were a few scenes where I felt like I noticed the acting a lot.
Okay.
Some of the group scenes. Because I was like panning a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I'm not get down to a 4. But as far as like construction, originality, the way it's shot, how kind of it like flips everything in the whole story on its head kind of thing, it's really good. And I will definitely see more Homeboys movies.
For sure. Well, thanks again for hanging with us on another episode 29 of the Buff and the Blazer podcast. I'm Drew here with El Toddo, and we will catch you guys next week.
Have a good one.